the newsletter that said if you sit in the first couple of rows, you get called on for giving the sermon. So just checking to see if you're reading that far down in the emails, and you all passed. We are delighted to be with you wherever you are in this sanctuary, in our digital community. We have members sitting in our Oneg room this week. We are a community that comes together in celebration of Shabbat, breaking all sorts of boundaries by doing so and celebrating in our connection. How wonderful it is to be together this evening. It is dark, but warm. So I'm really not sure what time of year it is out there. But at least we know we'll be warmed by our community together here.
And so we begin at the bottom of page 87. The bottom of page 87. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. One of the Psalms, Psalm 100. A reminder that even when there's plenty of seats here in the front.
You don't have to sit on kids' size. I promise we won't call on you, but there's also over there if you'd prefer that way.
We just want to say, as people are finding their seats, how lucky we feel to have the family of Ella Sugarman here with us tonight. If you are related to Ella, will you raise your hand? Oh, it's really nice to have you here to celebrate Ella's bat mitzvah tomorrow morning at 10. So we begin at the bottom of page 87. Let us remember to serve with joy, to find that joy. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Yalala, 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 yalala. Ya la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Ya la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
A prayer for veterans on this Veterans Day by Alden Salaby. God of compassion, God of dignity and strength, watch over our veterans in recognition of their loyal service to our nation. Bless them with wholeness and love, shelter them, heal their wounds, comfort their hearts, grant them peace. God of justice and truth, bless our veterans, these people of courage and valor, with a deep and abiding understanding of our profound gratitude. Protect them and their families from loneliness and want. Grant them lives of joy and bounty. May their dedication and honor be remembered as a blessing from generation to generation. Blessed are you, protector and redeemer, our shield and our stronghold.
Just out of curiosity on this Veterans Day, how many people in our kahal, in our community today, have themselves served or have had relatives who have served in our military. Yeah, I figured there was a lot of us. And so we turn to the lighting of our Shabbat candles, and just thinking about this blessing of Shabbat that we have each week, where we can come together, no matter if the week has been full of joy or sadness, or most often a combination of both side by side. And this was a tumultuous week, a lot of anxiety going into it for sure. And I came across a reading that felt like Shabbat itself, though it is written, I believe not by a Jewish person, somebody named Ganilla Norris. And they write, each of us can make a difference. Politicians and visionaries will not return us to the sacredness of life. That will be done, that has to be done by us, by ordinary humans who together or alone can say, remember to breathe, remember to feel, remember to care. Let us do this for ourselves, for each other, for our neighbors, for our children and our children's children. Let us practice for life's sake. And so in this Shabbat, we invite you to take that holy breath that hopefully connects us more fully to the sacredness, to the flow of life, no matter what is happening around us, something that we can always touch into, this gift we're given every week, and truly with every breath. And so on this Veterans Day, on this Shabbat of Ella Sugarman's Bat Mitzvah, we invite Joey, we invite Jeff and Rebecca and Ella on up here to light our Shabbat candles, bringing their light into this sanctuary as we celebrate this milestone in Ella's life and the family's life.
Are you a match or a...
And the words for this blessing you can find in your prayer book at the top of page 1 or on the screen.
Yep.
Turn to page 7, the 4th line down. Continuing with the Psalms. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, there is a light within each of us. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, O Yisrael Lev Simcha. Zarua Lat Sadiq, O Yisrael Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, O Yisrael Lev Simcha. O Yisrael Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, O Yisrael Lev Simcha. O Yisrael Lev Simcha. May that light continue to grow. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, O Yisrael Lev Simcha. And do it again. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, O Yisrael Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiq. little more percussion. O Zarua, Lat Sadik, O Yisrael Lev Simcha. And one last time. O Zarua, Lat Sadik, O Yisrael Lev Simcha.
Turn to page 11 for Lecha Dodi, our song that welcomes Shabbat into our community. We'll sing stanzas 1, 2, 5, and 9. When we reach the last stanza, the 9th stanza, I'll gesture with my hands. It's an invitation to you to rise in body and spirit, to turn to the back of the sanctuary and welcome the presence of Shabbat into your heart as fully as you can. Lecha Dodi, page 11.
Lechandodi, lekratala, yalala, 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 pene Shabbat, nekavela, yaela, ela, lechandodi, lekratala, yalala, 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 pene Shabbat, nekavela, oh, Shamor, Zachor, b'dibur echad, hishmi'anu el hamiyuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shemo l'tiferet v'litila, lechandori lekad kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela, lechandori lekrat kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela, oh, lekrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mikor ha'bracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh v'machshava tchila, lechandori lekrat kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela, lechandori lekrat kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela, oh, hitoreri, kiva orek umi ori, uri, shir daveri, kevod Adonai alayich nigla, lechandori lekrat kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela, lechandori lekrat kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela, oh, bo'i v'shalom ateret v'alam, gam v'simcha u'v'tzohalam, tov emunei am segulam, bo'i kala, lechandori lekrat kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela, yaela, lechandori lekrat kala, yalala, 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 p'nei Shabbat, nekavela.
Page 15. It is an honor to invite Ella up to lead us in the Chatzi Kaddish.
Page 194, I think you were there. Yeah.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ba'ala divara hirutei v'yamlich malchutei.
B'chayechon uvyomechon u'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala, ba'agala, uvizman kariv.
Ve'imaru.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'olam olam me'amaya, yitbarach.
Yitbara v'yishtaba v'yitpa'ar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'ala v'yithalal Shemei T'kudasha
Brichu.
Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata
Tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'alma.
Ve'imaru.
Amen.
Continue on page 16, on the far right column. Baruchu, dear one, inviting each other home into this sanctuary of prayer.
Baruchu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name, when I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruchu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name, when I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Dear one, Shekhinah, holy name, when I call on the light of my soul, I come home. We continue with the blessing Ma'ariv Aravim, the blessing for the evenings, and especially this week with the lunar eclipse. I don't know if anybody got to see at least images of it. These words meant so much. Your word brings on evenings. With wisdom, you open heaven's gates. With understanding, you change fixed times and alternate the seasons and arrange the stars in their places in the sky according to your will. Creator of day and night, rolling light before darkness and darkness before light. You cause day to pass and bring on night and distinguish between day and night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, and then day turns to night. Boreo balayla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei. All right, choose your part. Roll into dark, roll into light. וחושך מבני אור. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day. All right, one last time. Oreo, balayla, golel orim nechoshech, golel orim nechoshech, vechoshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into night. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. At the bottom of page 17. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Shema
ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. Baruch Shem, kivod malchuto, leolam vaed.
You may be seated. We continue with the Ve'ahavta, the acts of love that are to fill our days and our nights, our entire life, in response to the unity of all life. We'll start chanting the first paragraph of page 18, but put your finger into page 20. We'll jump directly to the second paragraph of page 20.
Ve'ahavta
Et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha
uvechol nafshecha
uvechol me'odecha vehayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We continue at the bottom of page 21 with the words the Israelites sang when they crossed into freedom. Words of prayer for the day when all are free. Mi chamocha.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh nora tehilot oseh pelech oseh pelech mi chamocha turn to page 103. The joy of Shabbat. Yismachu. Third song down. Yismachu lemalachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismachu lemalachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei Shvi Shabbat Kulam Yisbeu V'Yitangu Mituvecha Shabbat Yismechu B'Malachutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat V'Korei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu B'Malachutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Hashvi'i ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemdat yamim oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh v'reishit Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh v'reishit Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat.
Amy, it's not often the temple president gets stuck in the kiddie chairs. Do you want seats up here? We won't call on you, we promise. You too, Nicole. It didn't look that, it was, you know, it's probably good for hip mobility. It's got all sorts of benefits going there. So David and I got into a pretty good conversation this week as parents and partners in light of some language which is currently being used in the Arlington public schools when children's behavior is less than ideal. And the language that Arlington is using, at least with my family, is the language of repair. And they call and they talk about repairs and whether repairs have been made and all sorts of language around that. And we got into a really, really interesting conversation about those words and our emotional reaction to the word repair. When David and I went to school, you got detention. That's what you got if you behaved in ways that were less than ideal. And I mean, in some ways, the world is getting better. Okay, so that's good. That was one of those moments. But it got us thinking about that balancing that most of us are doing inside of ourselves when somebody around us is behaving in ways that we think are less than ideal. Which is not just a parent problem or a partner problem, it's a human problem. How do we respond in those moments? Do we respond with judgment? Do we respond with compassion? Do we find ourselves winding our way in between the two, or sometimes ping-ponging between the two, especially if the behavior happens more than once? How do we think we want to respond, as opposed to how do we respond? And what about the world around us affects how we are creating that equation in our mind? If the person behaves that way multiple times, does it change it? If you've had a bad day, probably. Rabbi Eli Confer, in reading this week's Parsha, Parshat Vayera, points out that this Parsha serves as a really good reminder to us of the constant balancing act that is tzedakah and mishpat. Some would say justice tinged with compassion, tzedakah, right? I'm always saying to you, remember, it's not charity, it's justice, but compassionate justice, and mishpat and judgment. Because in Genesis 18, God warns Abraham before the destruction, right? God says, I have to warn Abraham so that Abraham can instruct his children and his household to keep God's ways, doing tzedakah umishpat, doing that compassionate justice and judgment. Abraham famously does what? He starts arguing with God, right? We're learning about justice and compassion, and it turns out it's not always peaceful, right? Abraham says, what about 50? Would you destroy the city if there are 50 good people in there, right? 40, 30, 10, right? This is that famous source of the idea of 10 is a minyan, is what we need to have a group that constitutes a meaningful gathering. And so we are invited into the conversation this week in the Parsha to understand that tzedakah umishpat can be tumultuous, can sound an awful lot like an argument, right, between two people, or in this case, a deity and another person, and that two people or two beings can see the same situation and want to approach it from very different places, right? So we find the idea of the tension of these two here in our Parsha. And the rabbis pick up that tension and they stick it right into the heart of the Amidah. In a blessing that we don't say here on a Friday night because it's one of those intermediate blessings that we pull out on Shabbat. But it is a blessing, the 11th blessing, which is the blessing for righteous judgment, quotes those two ideas, tzedakah umishpat. Only it doesn't quote the sentence where Abraham is about to be warned that he is going to have to act with tzedakah and mishpat, and his family is going to have to act with it. Instead, it quotes about a chapter and a half later. The destruction has already occurred, and Abraham is standing on a hill overlooking what has happened. He stands there to witness the destruction. Now, Rabbi Eli Confer, I'm going to say his name 3 times that way, I'm going to get all the way back, argues that this is a pretty good lesson about the value of prayers even when they don't come true, right? Abraham argued, the destruction happened, he comes back to that same spot. And I think that's pretty ingenious, but I think that there's another lesson available to us. I think it's a reminder of how complicated it is to find the ever-shifting balance necessary between compassion and judgment. I think it's a reminder to us that moral clarity is momentary, that it comes and then the situation changes, or we change, or we're standing in the same spot using the same words, but it's later and we've learned or seen something new, and our understanding of what that balance is has to shift. Part of me imagines Abraham standing on that hill. And I admit that in my first bet about what he's thinking, he's angry. He's angry at the exercise of power that led to this kind of destruction. He's angry at himself that he didn't, argue harder or better or differently. And then I want to shout down at him through the ages and say, but wasn't it too much righteous anger that got us in the situation to begin with? What about some compassion? Not just for the victims, who he is clearly already feeling compassion for, and compassion can lead to anger. But how about compassion for you, for what you've been through? And maybe even finding some for God. How would it shift the equation if you could find compassion? The outcome might not change, but it might. We would theoretically be saying a blessing that reminds us of this entire conversation daily, twice daily. Twice daily, we would stand up by ourselves or in community and say, compassion and judgment, how am I going to balance them right now? What is called for in this moment? We don't. And we don't even say it on Shabbat, so effectively we don't say it all that frequently. But I think that Parshat Ve'era this week is our Reformed Jewish invitation into that conversation. This is the week for us to take out and lift up that balancing that is happening in our head all the time. I hope that we spend this week mindfully juggling the two. And I pray that we find blessing in the ever-shifting balance between them. We turn to the Amidah for our prayers. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit. Page 25.
Adonai, Sefatai tiftach, ufi agite ilatecha. Sefatai tiftach ufi agite ilatecha. Adonai fatai tiftach ufi agite ilatecha. Ata Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'Konei Hakol Ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Le'ma'an Shemo be'ahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch Ata Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye HaKol Ata Rav Lehoshia Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Ve'Rofeh Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot Umido Melach Melech Memit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman ata l'hachayot hakol Baruch ata Adonai Mechayeh hakol Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh U'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah Baruch ata Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Page 99. the third song down. And I'm going to say something I've never said before, which is if you didn't get a chance because you were praying to see the slideshow that was just shown that Dan Lieber put together, if you get a chance to go back on our recordings, our archives, to look at what he put together for tonight with the lunar eclipse, with the nature, with the birds, it is truly something to behold. And it is, I imagine, a little bit how Hannah Senesh felt when she wrote this poem. I pray that these things never end, the beauty that is around us. שלא ייגמר לעולם החול והים, רשרוש של המים ורק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים, רשרוש של המים ורק השמיים, תפילת האדם. Oh Lord, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. On page 130, we continue with words of healing, praying for those who are in need of healing, of body, mind, of spirit, for ourselves, for our loved ones, for those we don't know across this globe. As a community, we pray for the healing of Roxy Tosi, for Arave Alexander, who had a procedure today and is doing very well, I'm happy to say, for Joyce and Yishai Castro, Diana Sanders, for Duffy Brodsky, David Drazen, for Peter Feynman, Kathy Grossman, for Sonal Star and Joyce, for Nancy Alpert, Ayelet Bat Chava V'Her Shmuel, for Phoebe Einzig Roth, Debbie Gilman, for Neil Daniels Midman, Anya Kabel, for Sue Boardman, for Sarah Kianowski, for Debbie Sachs-Buteau, for Stanley Roth, for Kathy Nath. And if there are those you would like to say aloud, whose names you would like to say aloud, just raise your hand and I'd be honored to call on you. Thank you, Caroline. Man. Yeah, Gabe. For these loved ones, for those who are in our hearts, on the left-hand side of page 130. Mi sheberach Turning back to page 101 at the bottom of the page. On this Veterans Day, lifting up the words of the prophet Isaiah, may there come a day when nation does not have to lift up sword against nation. We even forget how to learn about war. Lo yisagoy el goy cherem, lo yilmadu od milchama, lo yisagoy el goy cherem, lo yilmadu od milchama, lo yisagoy el goy cherem, lo yilmadu od milchama, lo yisagoy el goy cherem, lo yilmadu od milchama. All right, let's make it around. Lo yisagoy el goy cherem, lo yilmadu od milchama, lo yisagoy el goy cherem, lo yilmadu od. One last time. Lo yisagoy el goy cherem, lo yilmadu od milchama. I would like to sing that for the next 24 hours, please. Very healing. And we turn to our Aleinu for this evening. Hareini Mekabel. Behold, I take upon myself this mitzvah, V'ahavta l're'acha kamocha, to love my fellow human as myself.
We invite you to rise in body or spirit.
Hareini mekabel alai et mitzvat haborei, ve'ahavta l're'acha kamocha, re'acha kamocha. Hareini mekabel et mitzvat haborei, ve'ahavta l're'acha kamocha, re'acha kamocha. Hareini mekabelet alai et mitzvat haborei, ve'ahavta l're'acha kamocha, re'acha kamocha.
Turn to page 44. Turning our hearts in this time in our service to those whose love lives on with us, even after they have died. We invite you, if you are joining us in our digital community this evening, to use the chat function of the technology you're using to add the name of your loved one who you are thinking of into our community of prayer. We'll name those on our membership, on our synagogue list, on our synagogue memorial list. And then for those in the sanctuary, we'll have an opportunity to say the names aloud of those who we are thinking of.
And tonight, Sandy Waxman is joining us remotely, and we are sad to tell you that her mother, Phyllis Seplow, died on October 31st, on Halloween last week. And also a recent death of Debbie Steiner Hayes' mother, Hilda Steiner, just on Tuesday. And Debbie will be here with us next week to talk about her mom a little bit before Mourner's Kaddish. The yard sites for tonight include Carol and Cy Ginsburg, Karen's parents, and Harriet Nemanoff Zimmer, beloved mother of Leora Zimmer, and I believe you're here with your sister Danya as well. And in this year of remembrance, we think of Stuart Fay, of Al Levin, of Claude Lieber, Ruth Sipperstein, Marvin Silverston, Janet Candle, Ken Blumberg, Henry Wolfson, Erwin Lebo, Helen Fine, Wynne Musgrave, Sue McHugh, and Bob Ruxon.
If there is someone you are thinking of, someone whose name you would like to share in our community, please raise your hand. It would be an honor to call on you.
Dr. Harold Borline, who was my high school history teacher in I was in 11th grade. He just passed away. Lenny McKenna. Bernard Stein. Dr. Earl. Annie Cameron.
For all those names, for those who have no one to say their name for them, we become one community of memory with the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 44. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shamaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be an abiding blessing. You may be seated.
Page 49, Shalom Aleichem. And just a couple of announcements. We're going to try something a little new tonight for Oneg because we didn't know how hard it was going to be raining outside. So we'll do Kiddush and Motzi up here after Shalom Aleichem. And then there's a beautiful Kiddush Oneg set up downstairs in the Oneg room. I think that room is very surprised to find itself filled with food once again. But we still need to be masked while we are in the Oneg room. So go on outside to that back balcony and have a nosh. The Oneg is sponsored by the Sugarman family, and we want to thank you guys for that. And next week, just as a heads up, it's going to be a pretty powerful Shabbat service. We have a baby naming, the first baby that is the child of somebody who grew up at Shir Tikvah, Marina Musicus Tutiano, and her husband and family, Bruce Musicus and Kathleen Morris and Lisa Langner will be here to name their son and their grandson. And we will also have a bar mitzvah family here, and Debbie Steiner Hayes will be here to talk about her mother. So a rich life cycle knitting together of our community in all these important moments. Also check your weekly updates. There's lots going on, Israel Committee and Adult Ed, Torah study tomorrow morning, all kinds of goodies going on. And may those Shabbat angels be with us on this Shabbat, on this very blessed Shabbat. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Serchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I'm wondering, Ella, if we could get you back up here one more time. Ella is one of the outstanding students in our 7th grade. Her family helps to organize our camping trip for these last years. And Ella, in your quiet way, I always know that you are following along with everything, and you know so much, and we are so lucky to have you in this community. And we're so glad your family. Are you all are you all Canadian peoples? Welcome. Welcome to you. And if you would like to rise for Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashavat lechaim. We have a beautiful challah here. We'll join Ella in blessing.
The cover off. Yep.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
And you get to
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Okay.
See you downstairs.
Are you sure?
Downstairs in the Oneg room or on the balcony.
Oh, okay.